Welcome back from your break. My name is still Jeremy Foster, Christopher Harrison. We are rocking it on mobile web, aren't we?
We certainly are. We certainly are. So that last module, you showed us how to do the server side. How about the client?
All right, let's do it.
Let's get right into it.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, so let's look again at our overview. We're rocking the modules here. We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and here goes 5. We're going to be talking about kind of the second part of my how do you do a practical application of this mobile web stuff. And really, when we were setting up the server, we didn't get to see much in the way of concepts that apply to mobile web development because we were working on the back end, right? But that's just where some guys live. They just work on the back end. That's where they camp. Others, front-end developers, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now, is the project that you'd be working on that would actually end up either being served to the mobile device, or if you were going to be wrapping this in an application, in an app wrapper, this would actually be living on the client and serving HTML pages on the client. So that's what we're going to talk about right now, and then Christopher's going to take the microphone and talk about offline data, and finally we're going to talk about publishing to Azure. So here we go on mobile client. So once again, short slide deck, mostly demos here. I'm going to be talking about the different options that you have for your client framework, much like I discussed the various options that you had for your server, for setting up your server. And then, big surprise, I'm going to choose to talk about Angular. That's just one that I'm working on these days. It's fun. It was a stab in the dark. Let's go for it. Mm-hmm. It could have been anything else. I don't want you to feel like there's any sort of an implicit endorsement or a champion or whatever. It's just one of the frameworks, works real well. We're going to use it. So let's, without further ado, look at the options for the client framework. Now, because I've chosen Angular, I'm going to use it as an example and talk about the different ways that we could get started with this project. The first one is plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Actually, before I talk about how to get started with Angular, I'm going to take you through some of the other options. We could just use plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
We could.
But that would be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, because sort of like when we were talking about the touch events, and all those touch events were, very, very specific. Could you go in and build in Pinch by just using the touch events? Sure, but that's going to wind up being relatively hard. There's a ton of libraries out there that you can use. Use the library. Use the best tools that are available to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or one step up, we could use plain old JavaScript, but we could add jQuery to it. Now, some things are easier, but we're still having kind of a framework that we have to implement for our application. And the downfall of JavaScript applications in the past has been that it's difficult when your project gets relatively large. It's difficult for it to scale like that. So then we want to use some sort of a framework library. And the two that I had in mind when I was working on the slide were Backbone and Angular. So we could decide between those. And as I said, we chose Angular. So let's take a look at getting started with Angular. So if we're going to get started with Angular, we could start from scratch. We could. Let's actually do that. Let's go to Visual Studio, just an empty Visual Studio here, and let's start with a scratch, vanilla, nothing website. I'm going to go to File, New, Project. Can everybody see where I'm at right there? File, New Project. Hopefully you're familiar with File, New Project. And the keyboard shortcut is Control-Shift-N. I like to use keyboard shortcuts. Now, it's a little bit...
keyboard shortcuts.
Exactly. It's a little bit funny when you're creating a blank website project, because if you're just making HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and you don't care about any sort of a website server-side technology, then it's a little bit counterintuitive to say, well, I want it to be C#, because that's what would be on the server if you were using it.
Right.
You still are creating a C# web project. We don't need the old-style Visual Studio 2012 project. We want to use the modern web, ASP.NET web application. And so we're creating an ASP.NET web application even if it doesn't have any C# code for us to use, even if we don't need any of that. So the one ASP.NET means that we have one project template here. I'm going to go ahead and put that in a kind of a scrap location that I use, calling it junk, and go. And now it asks me a follow-up question. What kind of a project template do you want to get started with? I can just choose empty and not check anything, and I'll show you that I'm going to get a project that is strikingly sparse. There it is. I've got a couple of these.
That's strikingly sparse.
That's strikingly sparse. The only thing I really have in here is the web config. This is just kind of a virtual folder.
Yeah.
And this is a CS file that kind of represents the assembly, but doesn't really do anything else. Now, this is a trick that I love. I can right-click on any project and just tap X, and what that does is it chooses Open Folder in File Explorer. I do that all the time. So there it is. Here's what's actually in this project. These are just derivatives. This is just that assembly information. Here's that web config in its various formats. And then I have my project file. So this is a really empty project. Do you ever get started this way?
On occasion, I will. In fact, when I did the little project that I called Christopher Demos, very creative, that was actually how I started it.
Yeah, right. I do sometimes too.
Yeah.
Now I can create an HTML file, call it maybe index.html, and I'm on my way to creating a full, robust, big application, but this is a hard way to go.
Go Tools, Options, and increase your font size.
Oh, thank you.
So.
Yeah, actually I will do it through here just so that I don't have to do that on every single page.
Yep. Yeah, and actually, if you're anything like me, and I know I am.
You are, yeah.
I am.
There's one thing I know about you.
I actually find it a lot easier when I'm learning things like Angular or otherwise to just start very, very straightforward, just very plain, and then building on from there. Because otherwise I find myself just getting confused by all the MVC moving parts and everything else. So just give me an HTML file, let me go play in there. Once I figure that out, then let me start grafting that onto whatever technology it is that I'm using.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Hey, let's just take this blank web application and let's build it up so that it will actually do something Angular-y. Okay?
Angular-y.
Angular-y. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first include Angular, and I'm going to use NuGet because it's super easy. So I'm going to go to manage my NuGet packages. And in here, there is a package for Angular. I don't want you to feel like NuGet does anything magic. It's super convenient, so it feels like magic. But all it's really doing is going and getting the Angular.js file, bringing it into my project so that I can make a reference to it. So I'm going to go ahead and search for Angular here. And I'm going to search in the online. And here's the Angular core. That's the only one I'm interested in right now. I'm going to go ahead and install that. We're at version 1.3. I'll take this opportunity to sip some water.
There you go. Wait for it to
If I tip my monitor to the right, the gravity makes that progress bar go a little bit faster.
See, yep, see, he tipped his monitor. There went, now he's got it back to steady again.
You didn't know that, did you?
No.
Yeah.
See, I always thought it was just moving the mouse that made it go faster.
All right, so now I have done that, and now I have a scripts folder with Angular in it.
Now, you could have, rather than using NuGet, you could have actually just gone out and downloaded the scripts and just put them into your scripts folder.
Absolutely.
That would have worked instead of doing NuGet.
There's actually about 1 million ways to do that one thing now. It can be kind of confusing.
Yeah, 50 ways to leave your lover and 1 million ways to pull in a JavaScript file.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so here I have Angular.js. It's inside scripts. Let me look at my index. I don't have a reference to it yet. Now, the kind of the definitive test as to whether or not Angular is working is if an Angular expression like 1 + 1 works on the page. So let's see if that's going to work. Let's go ahead and run this application.
So that angle is where some code is going to go eventually, but obviously not now.
It's not working, right? I mean, it's just rendering just like that. That's not what I want.
Nope.
Okay, so we're doing test first development here. Test-driven development.
First, yes.
So this is what I want to work, and it doesn't. I'm obviously going to have to bring in an Angular dependency. Now, like any well-respecting developer citizen, I'm going to bring in the robust one first, and then before I go to prod, I'm going to bring in min. But it's nice to have the version that might actually have some hope of giving me some good debug feedback in case it should come to that. So I'm going to bring that in. And so now I've got Angular. It's brought into this page, so that should work, right? Mm-hmm. No.
Oh,
still doesn't work.
Still doesn't work.
Yeah. And the reason why is because Angular ignores anything that's not inside of an Angular app. Now, some people put their Angular app inside the inside the HTML. Others put it in the body. It really doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'm just going to do ng app. That is now an Angular app. Everything inside the body.
That was easy.
Yeah, super easy. Now, hope that should work.
Okay.
Look at that.
So we needed the script and we needed to tell it that it was an Angular app, ng being short for Angular.
Yep. ng is short for Angular, obviously.
And it would also seem to it would seem to make just more sense in general to me to have the body marked as the app, since obviously that's where everything's going to be going.
Yeah, everything is going to be going in there, but it is pretty common, maybe even more common to put it in the HTML. I don't know.
Okay.
It's personal preference, and it really doesn't matter. And there may be times when you, I don't know, I've never seen this done, when you want two apps on the same page, and that's possible with Angular.
Okay. I like it.
Okay, so there's my ng app. And by the way, I've seen in the test site that we're going to be looking at, it's called Hot Towel. A little spoiler alert, that's what we're going to be looking at later. And the author likes to decorate these with data dash attributes, which makes this HTML5 compliant.
Okay.
I say fine, but we're doing a lot of hacky stuff, not hacky, but we're doing a lot of HTML manipulation in Angular anyway that wouldn't be on the surface HTML5 compliant, and Angular's fine with it, so you can choose to go either way you want there. Okay, well, we got Angular working from the ground up, but I tell you this, it's going to be some work to go and create your folders, create your controllers, create your modules, and build up from the bottom. So we want to find a way to get a good starting point.
Right, because Angular, if I remember right, is supposed to be an MVVM solution, model view, view model. So you should be able to create, hey, this is how I want my data to look. I want it to display over here eventually. So it sounds like there'd be a lot of moving parts in order to properly implement Angular that need to be set up.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's absolutely correct. And for clarity, there are controllers in Angular, and some people say that it's MVC, others say it's MVVM, and even the Angular team themselves say, well, it's kind of, I don't know if it's in between or kind of both or whatever. So they tend to say MV star.
MV star.
MV star pattern.
Okay.
Yep, that's the new MV. There are a million MVs out there. That's the new one. All right, so this is kind of fun. We've got it from the ground up. We don't want to go that way. So what I've done is I've researched all the different ways to do this. And the first way, it's really geeky, okay? This first way is really geeky. And I went down this road for a while, and it was fun because I'm a geek.
Yep.
This is not the way that I'm actually going to, break into this application. But this is a fun way, and you should know about it if you want to walk down this road. Maybe you're an expert on this road. I'm not an expert. I've got 200 level experience with it or whatever. But this is I'm going to use a tool, actually kind of a tool stack, and the first tool that we'll be using is called Yeoman. Okay, Yeoman is spelled Y-E-O-M-A-N, and there's a JavaScript library called Yeoman. Yeoman is a term for I don't know, service position, an archaic service position, but let's add JavaScript to that so we can actually get the right result back.
There we go.
So it is the web's scaffolding tool, and it's kind of got some sister projects. That is Grunt, and Gulp is another popular task runner, and then also Bower as a package manager. Okay, so this is a little bit of a suite of tools here, and if you get into this, you kind of accept all of the tools. I mean, you could obviously use them on their own, but you would tend to use them all together. Now, since Yo is short for Yeoman, Yo is good at scaffolding apps for you, like giving you a template, a project template.
So creating that MV asterisk for you.
Yep, all the folders, all the files, the pattern, everything. And then when it's time for you to make a new page with its own controller and all of that, its own view, you can scaffold. So you can add to your project with some scaffolding. Okay, so that's what Yo is for. By the way, Grunt is kind of analogous to, so Yo is kind of analogous to Visual Studio's project, new project.
Okay.
To the project templates. Grunt is roughly analogous to MS Build. All the things that you want to happen either pre or post compile, pre or post build. And then Bower is roughly analogous to NuGet.
Okay.
And there's Bower and NPM, and you might get confused between why do we have two, what's the difference between the two? And the fact is there's a bit of overlap because of the broad impact of Node.js, but really Bower is a package manager that's designed for bringing in project dependencies in the UI, in the front end. Okay, so it's made for bringing in your JavaScript libraries and whatnot. NPM is for bringing in Node modules, which may be client-side, but they also very well may be server-side Node modules.
Okay.
And we'll actually use those in just a second. We need to go out to nodejs.org.
So we need to go download and install a couple of tools there to make those work. Okay.
We've got to well, specifically, we've got to go out to the web this way to get this one tool, Node.
Okay. Node.
Okay? Once we have Node on our machine and it's all set up in our command prompt, or PowerShell is what I happen to use, and I've upped the font here a little bit. Does that look readable, or should I up it one more?
A little bigger.
A little bigger. I'm hearing a little bigger. Do I hear a little bigger?
There you go.
Look at that.
There we go.
Wow, we are rocking it. Okay, so I'm gonna jump out to the root directory just so it looks nice and reset. And I'm going to say Node. Now I have Node installed already. I already clicked the big green button and said install. It's a very easy process, so I'm not even gonna walk you through it. And so now I am at a Node terminal. Watch this.
I'm a little disappointed that you didn't do Hello World.
You are?
Yeah.
I'm a contrarian. What can I say? Now this is fun. This is fun because you're at a console that runs JavaScript. Does that excite you at all?
A little bit.
A little bit. A little bit of excitement?
Yeah.
Okay. This is cool. This is Node, and I can hit Control-C, and it says, hey, do that again. I like that. So I hit it again, and I'm out of Node. Okay? That was in Node. Now, along with Node, and when you install Node, you get NPM, the Node Package Manager.
Okay.
And so now I can type NPM install, and I can install all kinds of utilities. And if I'm in a project and I say NPM install widget manager or whatever it is, it's going to install it for that project.
Okay.
But if I say npm install -g, it's going to install it in my profile on this machine, so it's going to be available to me whenever I'm in the console.
So G for global.
G for global, thank you. Yep.
So this is very similar to just doing NuGet from the command line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's very similar to doing NuGet from the command line, except it's hitting obviously a different set of a different package manager server, looking at different packages, but obviously very, very popular. You're going to find a lot of modules that are available to you. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to use an alias that I created called create and oh, I did it backwards, I just realized. Create and make directory. It should be MCD. Make and change directory.
Oh, make and change.
And make directory, yeah. Boy, that was a fail. And actually, let me go into my temp folder first. Now I'm going to do CMD widget manager.
Okay.
And I just created the widget manager folder and moved into it. I got tired of typing that.
Okay, then.
Obviously, and I will not type it again. I'll type it one more time to change my spelling. Okay, so I am inside of here now, and now I want to generate a new project. So I want to yo.
Yo.
But I can't yo until I install yo, so I do npm install g yo.
Okay. And again, yo is what's eventually going to be building all of our controllers.
Yo is the tool, and it's going to be building. Now, I've already done it, so I'm not going to do that right now.
Okay.
Now, I've got yo. Now I need a generator. Okay, so I would do the same thing, npm install g.
And that was grunt.
That was not grunt. That was yo.
That was yo. I'm sorry, you're right.
Yep.
You're right.
Yep.
Sorry.
And now, when you create a project with yo, our camera guy is busting a gut here.
It's like, who's on first?
The line, for those of you who didn't hear, was this is like who's on first for nerds.
Which is completely true, yo.
What's on second?
Okay, what up, Grunt? All right, it's, yes, yeah, bear with me here, yo. So I've installed yo.
Okay, deep breath.
Cut the commercial. All right.
I got this for you then.
There we go.
Wonderful. All right, so I've installed yo. I've installed yo already using npm install -g yo. And the next thing, our camera guy's in big trouble. The next thing I need to install
Barry's
is
lost it back there. By the way, nobody in the Q&A window is having fun with us.
Yeah.
Which is really a shame.
No, it's because they're LOL.
Yes.
No, OT
ROTFL.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. Yo.
I guess I haven't been in the IRC in a long time.
IRC. Again, dating ourselves.
All right, I guess we better continue with this.
Okay.
Now, because I've installed the tool called I'm just going to call it Yeoman. That'll be easier. Because I've installed the Yeoman tool, I can now type yo, and I get this little interface. A lot of node modules do this for you. As opposed to making you type all the command lines, it just brings up an interface for you. And those of us, that don't know the tool well yet, rejoice. It's wonderful. So this says, "Hello, Jeremy. What would you like to do?" That's in a yeoman's accent, obviously. I can run a generator, either the web app generator or the Mocha generator. Those are the two generators that I currently have installed. Or I can update my generators, I can install a new one, or I can quit. That's called get me out of here. So I'm going to install a generator because I don't have it yet. So I'm going to npm install G. I want this to be global, not just available while I'm inside this project. npm install G generator Angular. I believe I have that right. And it's going to take a little bit of time. This takes some time, but I thought it would be good for you guys to see it, so I purposefully had Yeoman installed, but not the generator yet. So the generator's installing now.
It's going to do its thing. Yep. And Jeremy's going to have a sip of water back over here.
Oh.
So, by the way, a couple of people called us out for being old because of the IRC reference.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, they're just pointing out the obvious.
Yes. I miss the days of FidoNet and BBS and my, 28.8 modem.
Yeah, I was a what was it called? A sysop?
Sysadmin or sysop, yeah.
Sysop.
Yep.
Yeah, I was a sysop of a couple BBSs.
Yep.
All right, so this is done.
Go.
Now I have not only Yo, the tool, but I have the Angular generator. And I'm inside of my empty project here. I'm going to do a dir, nothing in here.
Okay.
I can now say Yo Angular. It's that simple to generate a new Angular project. Now this generator is kind of intelligent and interactive and attempts to be helpful. And it says, hey, do you want to use Sass? No. Do you want to include Bootstrap?
Oh.
Sure. Do you want these dependencies on other Angular libraries, like first-party libraries from Angular? And I could go, oh, well, maybe I'll take Animate and Route, but I don't need those ones. Now look at here, Angular Touch. There's an Angular Touch first-party library that's going to do kind of the analogy of what Hammer.js does.
Oh, that's fantastic.
If you want, you could check that out. We'll leave it off for now, and I'll hit Enter.
Yep.
And this takes a while. I actually did not mean to hit Enter there, because I'm kidding you not, this takes a long while.
Okay, it takes a long while, but it's actually doing quite a bit for you.
Sure.
That it's going out and getting all of those different libraries and setting them all up.
I mean, it's not to say I couldn't type all that just as fast, but yeah, you're right, it is doing a lot for me.
I'm just trying to, make you feel good.
Mad keyboard skills, but still, it's going a little bit faster than me.
Yep.
No, it really does a lot of stuff, but the thing that that really takes a long time is that when you install a node module, it itself has node modules, like dependencies on node modules, which have dependencies on node modules, which have dependencies on node modules.
They tell two people and
lather,
they tell
rinse,
two
repeat.
people. Yeah, okay.
So, and actually this becomes a problem in the Windows operating system. We have a hard time with huge file names.
Right.
And because these folders, these node modules get nested so deeply, there's a point in time at which you start running into some errors because of the nesting in the node modules.
Okay.
So, to be honest, it becomes really difficult.
Right.
And you need to find a workaround. You can use a node package manager besides NPM that doesn't use the nesting. There's various ways to handle it, but anyway. You get the point.
Yep.
Now, I just broke in the middle, so I completely hosed that project, but that's okay. We don't really need to look at it anymore.
Right. Yep.
What it gives you is a very rich project that's written according to the author's ideas of how a good Angular app should be set up, and I can tell you it's well designed. It also has heavy dependencies on the grunt, Bower, build process and deployment methods. And I'm not entirely comfortable with those. I had fun exploring it, and I especially enjoyed being able to type grunt serve, which spins up a service, serves your web page, opens the browser and displays it, and then watches your file system such that if you go back to Visual Studio and change something and save it, it instantly gets picked up and served. Your changes do. So it creates a very fast workflow. We kind of have the same workflow with with Visual Studio. But
Yep. So, and one of the things that I would mention here is that the story that Jeremy is telling is the exact truth. This is what happened. That he went off and decided, hey, I'm going to do this from scratch, and then
making it up.
We were on a conference call, and he said, it's not really working. So, I found this really cool thing called Yeoman, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to start playing around with that. And so, he went with that for like a day or two. And then we got back on a conference call, and said, I'm really not keen on this. I want to go a different direction. And then you landed on...
Landed on, well, not even the next one. I went down a trail. I did this research, so you don't have to. That's the point here. Okay, so let's get out of this. Now, let's actually try something here. I'm going to try in PowerShell to delete my widget manager folder. And, just PowerShell is just wonderful. Look at this. Tab to complete, wonderful. I'm going to force that, and I'm going to do it recursively, and I'm going to see if it'll delete it. Now, sometimes because of the, look at that. The path, file name, or both are too long. If you run into that, the best remedy I've found is to go into the file system and shorten the names of some of those files, and you'll get it to delete. But it's just not fun. It doesn't make your day. Oops. So let's look at the next method. Back to the slides. The next method is the Angular Seed app. Okay, so this exists if you go out to the Angular JS website, which I've forgotten the URL of. Is it angularjs.org, .com, angular. I do not know. angularjs.org. There it is. If you look in there like I'd like to learn Angular, they're going to show you the Angular Seed project. And this Angular Seed project is really just a project on GitHub. Angular Seed. Here it is. And this project is the Angular team's way of saying this is the best way to get started with a project. That comes with some significant authority, right? Because they created Angular. So if you want to use this one, your workflow might look something like this. Let's go into, I'll just stay in my temp folder. Let's do a git clone of this. Control V in the new Windows 10 PowerShell. It's like butter. Cloning into Angular Seed, it's going to take a little bit of time. Bada bada boom, there we go. Now I'm going to CD into Angular Seed, and here I have the project.
Okay.
All right. Now it's a pretty strong convention to have an app folder with your actual code in there, and then use the top level for all your kind of administrative things. You can see that we've got like the Bower.js, the package JSON. If you don't know what these things are, don't panic. I'm going to go into app and look in here, and you can see now we're seeing some things that look familiar. There's my index HTML, some views, the CS, the JS, those are looking familiar.
Okay.
So this is the Angular Seed application, and this is a decent way to start. I didn't love what it gave me out of the box, and so I kept looking, and I think I found something I like better. The next one that I want to show you is I just like to circle because I've got a touch. Don't I have a touch?
You had touch earlier.
I had touch earlier.
It's in
Broken. No, that's not my touch. Touch is broken. That's okay. We can live with the mouse. We lasted many, many years with the mouse alone. The ng.NET VS project template. I found this in Visual Studio. I'm going to go ahead and close out my existing project here. I have nothing open in Visual Studio. Control-Shift-N, new project. I don't want to look for a template on my computer. I want to go online.
Oh. It's a neat little feature.
It is a wonderful little feature. And I'm going to go ahead and start to type this in here or pretend like I'm going to type it into the search, but really, look at that.
So you already had it.
It's already right there. It's like one of the more popular. So that's cool. I'll go ahead and type it into the search. ng.net, actually, yeah, ng.net.template. You create this, and it's going to give you a full Visual Studio Project template. Now, this is an interesting template, very different from the first two that we looked at, because this one is an MVC website that's serving views as things like index.cshtml. This is a Razor page. It's just that the Razor page is decorated with Angular directives.
Okay.
All right? So this is a little bit, in my opinion, this is a little bit too like mixed.
Yeah,
No.
so yeah, we're kind of getting away from where we wanted to be with all of this, with just straight HTML and kind of
Right.
that route. Yeah, okay.
And another way to say it might be this. If I'm making an MVC website and using MVC, may as well use MVC.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to use that to build an Angular website that can then run as a rich client application.
Sure.
I can just run the JavaScript. So I didn't choose to do this route, so we're going to get to the real meat of the matter, and that is Hot Towel by John Papa. I have a really hard time calling John Papa John. Just call him John Papa. It just flows off the tongue. So henceforth, I will refer to him by his fully qualified name, John Papa, because he's the author of this. A lot of respect for the template. He did a really good job on it. And I'm going to show you how to get started with that one.
All right.
Just like before, we're going to do a File, New Project. That's the Control-Shift-N keyboard shortcut. Visual C#, Web. Start with the empty... with the web application. I'm going to create it under temp here. Okay, and create it out. Don't need to create my cloud project yet. I'm going to create an empty one, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Now, I'm not creating anything here, just a
Once again,
completely
empty.
application. Yep.
Nothing up your sleeves.
Exactly. Now I'm going to go manage NuGet packages, and I'm going to search for Hot Towel. Hot Towel Angular. It's got some other support projects, but the dependencies are automatically resolved in NuGet. So, for instance, the Hot Towel Angular Breeze has a dependency on Hot Towel Angular. So that's all managed for you. I just need Hot Towel Angular for this demo, so I'm going to go ahead and install that.
So it's just going off, grabbing all the scripts that you're going to need.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in here. Now, this is not set up as kind of a hybrid like the ng.net project template
Right.
that I showed you. This one's genuinely just HTML
Just
and JavaScript.
HTML.
There's no MVC that's going on in here.
Okay.
So I'm going to close this down. I'm going to show you what John Papa has given us in this demo. As a matter of fact, the first thing I'm going to do, I like to do this whenever possible, just hit go and watch it run. So you can see that there's no modifications or anything that's necessary. And notice the toasts that popped up on the bottom right of the screen.
Nice.
That's pretty slick, and I can click on one to dismiss it. I have a couple of pages over on the left that it's kind of nice because you might want to have an index of all your pages over here on the side. So even though most of it isn't implemented, there are pages for them. And you can see that when I activated the admin page, or when I activate the dashboard, it gives me a toast that says, hey, you just activated this.
And what happens when you resize your browser there? So let's imagine that I was, looking at this with a mobile device.
Absolutely. That's a great question. One of the reasons why I chose this is because in talking about developing reactive sites for
Right.
mobile browsers, I wanted to utilize this one because it actually uses Bootstrap. And whoops, I didn't mean to
It
completely...
dragged it a little too far there. Yep.
There we go. We can watch the progression. Here's the full one. Now watch what it does as I get smaller. It says, oh, not quite enough room. I'll snap these grid columns down to become rows. And then smaller still, watch the dashboard and admin on the left. Those are going to turn into a hamburger at the top right.
Yep.
And
Yeah, but at least he's got that menu call right there as well.
that's
although
right.
that eventually
Until that
goes
finally
away.
goes
Yeah.
away as well. Yep. So that's what we have. We have a reactive site. I don't know if this is native Bootstrap. Is that native Bootstrap?
It's not native Bootstrap. no.
Jump to the top.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice feature. I
is
do
a
hate it on
very
my
nice
phone
feature.
when I have a 4-mile page. I get to the bottom and then it's like, well, I really need to get to the top. So
Yeah. Instant carpal tunnel.
I actually have this little gesture with 2 thumbs where I can really get it going. That's my exercise for the day.
And done.
Okay, so this is a pretty nice site to start with.
Sure.
When you're wanting to start a mobile website, this may be the place that you start. It did not take me very long to grok the architecture that was implemented here and to be able to implement my own things. So if I wanted to create like here's my dashboard, here's my admin, and if I wanted to create a new page, much like admin, I basically just create a new folder in here, and I create the HTML and the JavaScript and structure things the way they have it. It's a really good way not only to get a starter website, it's a really good way to learn Angular. Really is. And because it's already got Bootstrap not only implemented, but implemented in a very practical scenario, it's a really good way to learn Bootstrap as well.
Nice.
Now this is the one that I just spun up from scratch, but what I'm going to do is close that, and I'm going to open the one that I created and is checked into the Frayed Knot GitHub.
Again, pulling the pre-baked cake out of the oven.
Exactly, pulling the cake out of the oven. I'm going to close all of the files and hide my hidden files so that you don't feel like there's anything weird going on. And here we are. So this is the same project, same structure, but I've added a little bit to it, and I want to just show you what I've added. Now, you introduced Hammer, and I talked about Azure Mobile Services. Those are two kind of services that we want to take on.
Yeah.
And so what I've done here is I've navigated into the app, and I found this services folder, and I found that John Papa had implemented data context and directives, these services that he's created in here. Data context is one that he created. This isn't a first-party service, and this isn't a third-party that he found somewhere else. I guess you would say this is a second-party service.
Part of the first part talking to this part of the second part. Okay.
If I did my math right.
Yep.
And so I knew that this is where mine go. Okay, now I've brought in, actually, I may have done this a little bit wrong because I brought in third-party services and put them into the same place, but actually I think that's the right place for it. So I knew that I had Azure Mobile Services, so I went out to the web and said, I wonder if there's an Angular module or plugin for Azure Mobile Services. And it didn't take me long to find that there is an Angular Azure Mobile Services plugin.
Oh, well,
and this exists for all kinds of libraries because it's very popular, okay? So I bring that in here, and you can see that this is a relatively small adapter. We call it an adapter or a shim because it's basically just taking a library that already exists, the Azure Mobile Service Library, and it's angularizing it. Okay,
Angularizing.
by the end of this course, you will have every form of the word Angular in your vocabulary, and it's not that big. I mean, this is there's a lot of scrolling there, but it's honestly not all that big.
Yeah, a lot of that is white space.
Right, and what it does is it gives us nice functions for our Azure Mobile Service calls, like query. Remember how I used the REST service and I went to the actual HTTP with tables/knots?
Yep.
Well, now I can just say query, and I can say the table name, and it's going to implement promises and come back with a promise, and it's going to be a real friendly way to do that. Now, I did the same thing with Angular, so I also found an Angular Hammer shim and implemented that Angular Hammer shim. You can see how short this one is. This one's really short. This is even with 47,000 point font. And you can see here all of those all of those Hammer methods, those events that you were showing us.
Yep.
Now, I brought them in, but how do I actually plug them in? Well, I go into the, I believe it's not under scripts, it's under the app.js. This is the main module, and I say, I've got a couple more modules for you here, Angular. I've got WAM's module, and I've got Hammer. And this is what it's actually called in that shim library there.
Okay.
WAMs.module or Hammer. So those are now modules recognized by this Angular application. And so now in a given page, so let me go to the dashboard page. On the dashboard page, I should run this for you. This should run. If it doesn't, I'll be sad. There it is. Now on the dashboard page, you'll notice first of all I got rid of those pages on the left. Our application doesn't need that. I just have the knots and the categories. Well, these knots, see, it's bringing in the images. You know what I did over here? Can you see this real quick, Christopher, and see what I did here?
So you've got the little images, yeah.
Yeah, but do you see anything? Do you notice anything?
Taking a little while to load.
Do you know why?
I have a feeling you're about to tell me.
I resized them the way you said not to.
Oh.
I wanted to do that as a brilliant demonstration of what happens if you take a gigantic image and you just ask their browser to resize it. So there I have. Okay, now I've got a list of knots. So obviously on this page, I've gone to Azure Mobile Services and said, hey, yo, not yo, but yo, I need the knots.
Okay.
Right? So let's see how we did that. Here I am on the dashboard page.
Yep.
Here's the JS. And in that JS, obviously, you're going to find some Azure Mobile Services in here. And in fact, you don't. Obviously, you're going to, but in fact, you don't. And the reason why is because it's all hidden behind the data context service. This is really good practice. This means that my controller does not have any knowledge of how it gets knots. It just asks the data context every time, hey, give me some knots. Data context is responsible. So now let me jump into the services, into the data context, and see it should have a dependency on Azure Mobile Services. And in fact, it does. There's WAMs. And I'm basically, this is really cool what's going on here. When I create this factory is a service that I'm creating, hanging it right off of the app module. And when I create this factory, I get to just inject these strings that say, hey, I need the WAMs service in here. Could you get that for me? And then down here, and by the way, when you get that for me, I'm going to call it WAMs. And so now inside here, I have the access to the WAMs module.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the WAMs service. And I know that the WAMs service has a query, and so here we go. Here we go. This is cool.
Let's bring it all in. Yep.
WAMs query knots.
Perfect.
Could not be easier.
So just go get my knots.
Go get my knots. Hey, Azure Mobile Services, I'm querying knots.
AMS, Azure Mobile Services.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Thank you for tying that together. I assume that sometimes. Windows Azure Mobile Services.
Yep.
I would like to ask for the knots.
Perfect.
It brings them back, but as a promise. So get knots is going to return a promise.
And a promise is?
Okay, so thank you. A promise is the analog of async await in C#.
Okay.
It's the JavaScript way of doing things asynchronously.
Okay.
If I ask you a question and you give me a promise, you give it to me immediately and you promise you'll get back to me.
Right.
And I can hold on to that and keep asking it whether you're done yet.
Okay.
Okay, so get knots for this service returns to me a promise that will have a payload of the collection of knots. So now let's go back to our dashboard and see where we're asking that dashboard for the get knots. Whoa. Oh, I'm sorry. So we're doing it. This is a pattern that John Papa set up in this project. It's pretty cool. He basically creates an array of promises and then calls this custom method that says, await all those promises, and when you're done, then do this. So it's nice because it gives you a chance to do something once all the data has been fetched.
Okay.
So this get knots is being called, and it's coming back with its results. And so here's what we're going to do. Get the knots, and then return the results of the knots to this little thing that I'm making called the view model.
So that then is, hey, once you've loaded all the data, now I want you to do this.
Yep.
Perfect.
This is the asynchronous part of it.
Okay.
Only after this part is done should you then do this.
Awesome.
There you go. So this is loading up our view model, and this is the entire job of the controller. Go
Okay.
get the data, put it in the view model so that the view model looks exactly like what the view is expecting.
Awesome.
All right. So that is bringing back the knots. Now the only next part I need to show you is how I implemented the Angular hammer shim. Okay. So that's the knots, the data context page. And the interesting thing about the data context page is that it's showing you not only a list of knots, but a list of categories. Do you remember how we got categories?
Yeah, you had that API that you created. Yep.
Exactly. So let's go look real quick in the data context. And to get the categories, look, instead of calling WAMs query, I call WAMs invoke API.
Right, because it was an API creation.
Yep. That gets me my categories. Those come back. And the reason why this dashboard is a really good demo is because it's not a one-to-one mapping to an entity, like a knot or even a collection of knots. This dashboard is a list of different things. And so you need the list of knots over here and the list of categories over here. That's why you need a view model. If this was just a list of knots, then your view model is basically the same thing as your model. It's just knots. But in this case, we want a view model which contains knots and categories, and that view is going to be looking for in the view model, it's going to be looking for the knots and looking for the categories.
Okay.
All right, so that's been set up. Now, if I click on one of these knots, like the bowline, it's going to navigate me to another page. And this little pop-up says that the knot data was retrieved. I don't have a lot of robust data coming back
That's
on this
okay.
right now.
Yep.
But it says bowline, and you know I didn't type it,
Yeah.
right? Because you know me better than that.
Yeah.
I just typed it. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so now we're on the knots page. So let's go into the app, into knot. Here's our JS. And in here, we are calling our data context. Well, that's for the get steps. We don't care about that. I'm not showing you much about steps right now. We're calling our data context to get the knot itself. And where are we doing that? Under get knot, right here. Get knot. The route params is what was passed in. So when I navigated here, look, Angular said,
You want to zoom in on that?
oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Angular said, don't really navigate. We're not really changing location here. We're just tricking you. We're just putting a pound in here, which means no request is done. It's just that the URL changes, and now it has a different set of URL parameters, a different route path. And so Angular can handle that, and it can switch to a new page, navigate to a new page the way it wants to.
Okay.
So I get those route params, and I have a chance to get my knot. So I get my knot, but I not only get my knot, but I get the knots next to it. I get the next knot and the previous knot.
Okay.
And in noticing that this is commented out, I'm wondering if I don't have the latest here. That would be bad, because I wouldn't get to see the hammer work. I wouldn't get to drop the hammer, if you will. All right, so I've got this Angular hammer shim, and now let's go look. I've shown you the JS files here, but let's go look at the not HTML. Because on the JS, you know that I'm building up this VM with things like its name and its steps and its next knot and its previous knot and stuff like that. Well, in the not HTML, this is where Angular really shines with its data binding, because I just get to use this really nice Angular syntax here, these double curly braces, and say things like, in my view model, get me the name. And now in my view model, get me the image URL. And for my controller, at the same level as my controller, I get to wire up these hammer directives.
Okay.
So I wire up my swipe left and say that's the not event. And my swipe right is the previous not event. And I really think this is not going to work because these are commented out, but let's go ahead and jump back and try that. So I'm on the bowline, and I'm going to swipe left, and sure enough, it doesn't. So I must have missed a check-in or something like that. That's goofy. But anyway, I had it working so that I swipe this, and it actually navigates to the next knot.
So again, bringing the hammer and Angular and hot towel and putting all of that together.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just kind of bringing in all of those different technologies and bringing them together using Angular in this really nice adaptable format. So we looked at that, we looked at that, we looked at that, we looked at that. In summary, there's that. And that's that,
In summary, there's that. So what we saw there, just to put together a real quick summary here.
Oh, good luck with that.
No, but anyway, so just to kind of bring all of that together, what we saw was really kind of the thought process that you went through. That, hey, we want to put together a client. We want to do it with some form of a technology. We don't want to do it with raw JavaScript or jQuery. So let's do it with Angular. Angular is great, but it really is designed for some form of MVVM or MVC. So let's, again, find a library, and you walk through a couple of different libraries and settled upon, in this case, hot towel. But I think the real big point to make out of all of this is the fact that there's a ton of libraries that are out there. You could have gone with almost one of a billion choices to get the job done. So really, I think the takeaway from all of this is find what's going to work best for you. In this case, it happened to be hot towel for you. If you decide that you want to go use then you could go in and do that. If you wanted to use a different library, you could do that. But also keep in mind that just because you're using some other library doesn't mean that you can't bring in something. So if you like Hammer, chances are somebody's already created a plugin that would bring that into play. Did I hit that?
That was wonderful, and it lets me know that you were paying attention. And
my phone was over there.
These days, we as developers have to let go of the idea that there is one right way to do it.
And not only that, I'm going to go one step further with this. We as developers need to let go of the axiom of, well, I can build it better if I build it from scratch. Because you probably can't, and I always remember my teacher in like third grade always said, when you're pointing, you've got 6 fingers pointing back at yourself, and so I actually, true story, I was this much of a kind of off center as a kid. Then I started pointing like this. See, that way all my fingers were pointing out that direction. But whenever I say you, I also mean myself. That there's a very good chance that I can't build it from scratch better than some other library, and even if I could, the amount of effort that I'm going to put forth is probably not going to be worth it in the long run. So take advantage of what's already there.
Especially when you're comparing it to the free alternative.
Yeah, exactly.
How little would you have to pay yourself per hour?
Yeah.
Exactly. I was looking for a handle for Christopher Harrison. I think off-centered.
Off-centered?
That does it. That
All
does
right. Okay. I'm still going to keep Geek Trainer, but I like off-centered. All right. In any event, let's go ahead and take 10 minutes. We're going to come on back, and we're going to shift gears back to a little bit of lower level. We'll talk about how to handle offline caching and a little bit of geolocation. So what do you say we take 10, and then we'll come on back?
I say.
All right. Yo.